Hey guys, I'm Hop, and this is a Caracal 816. Well, it's the top half of one anyway. The 816 is the spiritual successor to the Sig Sauer 516, which was itself developed as an upgrade of the HK 416. The HK 416 is a weapon system that has achieved almost mythical status. The United States Marine Corps liked it so much they replaced all of their rifles with 416 derivatives, which might seem like a strange decision, but remember, these are the same guys who mass adopted the PEC 16, so they're not exactly batting 1,000. The HK-416 is also famous for being the gun that killed Osama bin Laden, which is kind of peculiar considering bin Laden died in 2004 of renal failure, but that's not how they showed it in Zero Dark 30. I think you can make the argument that the Sig Sauer 516 is in fact 100 better than the HK-416, but I'm not sure you could argue that the 816 is 300 better than the Sig 516. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, the 816, the 516, and maybe the 416, because I never miss a chance to run my mouth about short-stroke piston ARs. Let's go for it. Today's video was made possible by our sponsor, Venture Surplus, the home of all the food the U.S. military doesn't need anymore, including the More supplemental ration pack designed to give you extra calories of the fun variety when you're operating at high altitudes. I like them because they're the fun part of MREs without any of the boring parts. MRE components can be sorted into three types. First is the life-sustaining calories, boring. Second is the fun snacks that look like sepia-toned Dharma Initiative versions of what you'd buy at the gas station. And third is the trash you have to put back in the bag and take with you on the hike out. I always wanted to try the fabled First Strike bar, but as far as I know, they aren't included in normal MREs. But sometimes in a More packet, you get the Mocha Mini First Strike bar, which is basically a big, flat, coffee-flavored Tootsie Roll fortified with 110 milligrams of caffeine. If you have the means, I highly recommend picking one up. Check out Venture Surplus at the link in the video description and use the code provided to save 10% off your order. Thank you to Venture for sponsoring this show. Thank you guys for watching. Let's continue. The original model of the HK-416 was kind of a rush job, and even though the design team wanted to make some generational improvements, HK was not interested at the time. Sig Sauer USA poached some of HK's design talent and developed their own 416 with blackjack and hookers, and they called it the 516 so everyone would know it was better. They also produced a large frame version called the 716. I'm not sure why they didn't call it the 517 to stick with the naming convention of the 416 and 417, or the SCAR 16 and 17, but whatever. At least they managed to bungee a 7 in there. The 516 won a handful of contracts and stuck around in SIG's catalog for about a decade before being phased out and replaced with the MCX platform. But the 516 lives on because some of the design team went to yet another company, this time Caracal in the United Arab Emirates, to design the 816. And yep, they also make an 817, you just can't buy it here. The 416, 516, and 816 are all largely standard AR-15s, albeit with a short-stroke piston system. They still require the buffer tube assembly, making them a much less radical departure from a normal AR-15 design than something like the SIG MCX, which contains the entire recoil system in the upper receiver. The HK-416 has a few quirks that the SIG 516 sought to address, such as non-standard handguard and upper geometry. The 416's upper receiver and handguard are taller than a standard AR, as you can see from the hump just in front of the charging handle slot. It also did not originally have an adjustable gas system, but rather a self-regulating gas system, making it a less than optimal suppressor host. The SIG 516 is built off of a standard AR-15 upper and lower receiver set, although the SIG 516 uppers have a notch cut into them that interfaces with a tab on the handguard for improved lockup, a feature carried forward from the 416. The 516 barrel nut looks very similar to a mil-spec AR barrel nut, and the two-piece free-float quad rail handguards look very similar to rails from Midwest Industries and Centurion, but both are actually proprietary. The 516's big upgrade is a 4-position adjustable gas block with settings for normal, suppressed, adverse, or off. So basically it's a 3-position gas block that you can break on purpose. The gas system on the 516 can be readily switched between regular and adverse modes by rotating the gas adjustment knob with your fingers or a bullet tip. Accessing the suppressed setting requires you to deliberately depress a little plunger on the front of the gas block, so you shouldn't have to worry about accidentally turning your 516 into a single shot when trying to gas it up in a bad situation. The 516's extremely beefy gas block and shorter receiver height means the rail can't fully cover the gas block, so they used a railed gas block, which is very 2010. The The first generation 516s had a handguard that stopped just short of the gas block, but the later Gen 2 models have a slightly extended handguard, which gives you more rail estate on the sides and bottom. The short-stroke piston design in the 516 is very similar to LWRC's piston system, so similar in fact that you can use an LWRC bolt carrier group in the 516. So similar in fact that LWRC sued SIG over it in 2011. The cherry on top for me is the fact that in 2016, the original founder of LWRC sued Sig Sauer and his former company, claiming that neither of them had the rights to use his design without paying. The 516 is no longer available commercially, but the more modern Caracal 816A2 is still in production. The 816, at least the version we can get in the United States, is less of an upgraded 516 and more of a side grade in my opinion. Caracal retained the adjustable gas system from the 516, but ditched the useless offsetting. The 816 also returns to a taller humpback-style upper receiver like the 416. The taller receiver and slimmed-down gas block means the 816 has a full-length top rail on the handguard. So, who did it best? I spoiled this in the intro, but the 516 is a really great rifle. I assume. I only had a 516 upper, but a lower is a lower is a lower. Until fairly recently, you could easily find contract overrun 516 uppers for stupid cheap. For a while, I think SIG was liquidating old inventory by pin and welding flash hiders to 14.5-inch barreled uppers. Some early birds got lucky and scored complete uppers for like $500, which is an insane deal. By the time I bought mine, the secret was already out and they were more like $800. Now you can expect to pay about $1,000, which is probably what these uppers should actually cost. Mine was one of the last new old stock uppers before they totally dried up. By that point, they weren't doing pin and welds anymore, so I was able to install my own muzzle device and shoot the gun suppressed. My understanding is that at various times for various contracts, the 516 was available with a cold hammer forged chrome lined barrel, a cold hammer forged unlined barrel, a button rifled chrome lined barrel, and a button rifled nitride barrel. But the upper I had was nonetheless extremely accurate. I always got impressive results from it, even shooting PMC green tip and without a high magnification scope. I can't really explain it. I think they might just be really good barrels. The 516 does show its age a bit with the massive railed gas block and the beefy two-piece free float quad rail with an included heat shield. You can improve the feel of the gun and cut some weight by getting an aftermarket handguard. They're still available from Midwest Industries or Lancer. The Midwest Industries handguard is M-LOK and it extends past the sides of the gas block, kind of like the Gen 2 handguards on the original gun. The carbon fiber rails from Lancer still have an aluminum top rail section and it's very rigidly installed, so they should be perfectly stable for mounting a laser module. If you want to modify the 516 more extensively, you're going to have to remove the gas block, which is double pinned to the barrel and at least on some 516s may also be press fit on. And you'll also need to track down a special tool for the proprietary barrel nut. Apparently they're out there, but they're extremely hard to find. Now that 516 uppers and rifles are getting harder to find and the prices have gone back to probably what they should have been all along, it's not really a good buy unless you just want a beefy retro quad rail piston gun. The Caracal 816 is still in current production, so they're very easy to find. The longer barrel uppers have really ugly looking barrel profiles and more exposed ankle than you can shake a corset at. The 11.5 version, however, is very attractive and currently runs about $1,500, which is not bad. The version of the 816 sold to the American commercial market doesn't have a cold hammer forged or chrome lined barrel, which is unfortunate. The 816 definitely feels nicer than the 516. The slimmer and lighter M-LOK handguard is clamped to the barrel nut in a very novel way that keeps it from having any sort of hump on the bottom like you would see with almost any other friction fit handguard. The full-length top rail means you can push accessories all the way out over the gas block without mounting to the gas block itself. I don't think I'd ever want to mount a fragile $1,000 laser module to the top of a hot gas block. It's kind of weird that Caracal doesn't have an extended handguard with a cutout for gas block access on the longer barreled versions of the 816. If nothing else, it would look a lot better. Considering the current obsession with skyscraper optic heights, the taller receiver of the 816 might actually be a selling point. A lower third optic on a Caracal 816 ends up sitting about where a 1.93 optic would sit in relation to the buffer tube and barrel. Food for thought. If you want to keep it more old school, Brownells makes a 416 clone upper called the BRN4. You can stick your choice of 416 handguard on it and put it on a regular AR lower. The BRN4 seems like a cool project upper to build a 416 on a budget, although it's still $1,000 with no handguard, so maybe budget isn't the right word. And the gas system is the older, non-adjustable type. Of course, if you'd rather have a real 416 than a fake 416, that's still an option. HK did get around to updating the 416 a few years after the SIG 516 came out. The The 416A5 variant has a toolless adjustable gas system similar to what was on the 516, albeit with only two positions, regular and suppressed. The 416 doesn't need an adverse setting because the whole gun is always adversely gassed. Well, we can't buy the 416A5, but HK did just release the newest civilian variant, the MR556A4. This has the adjustable gas block and a new M-LOK handguard, which looks very nice other than the big billboard on the side. Curiously, the 556A4 does not have a chrome-lined barrel, which is a controversial move on a $3,500 gun. If you want to know more about the BRN4, the 516, and the 816, Focus Strip did videos on all those uppers, including detailed teardowns. Go watch those videos. I'm not going to try to reproduce his hard work here. Also, as I was finishing this video, Regular Guy Training released his review of the BRN4 with a pretty sizable round count, so you should watch that one too. Alright, now we have to get into the heavy subject matter. Are short stroke piston ARs total fucking bullshit snake oil or not? Back in the bad old days, people actually used to believe that external piston ARs were superior to direct impingement ARs, full stop. This is how Ruger was able to get away with selling an 8-pound, $2,000 rifle for so long. Nowadays, savvy gun guys have knowledge of the AR platform that postdates the Vietnam War, so the theoretical advantage of piston ARs everyone focuses on is performance when suppressed. This assumption is based on two things. One is that a lot of external piston ARs have simple, rugged, adjustable gas systems like the one on the SIG 516, which are a lot more appealing than an adjustable AR gas block that requires carefully tuning a set screw or counting through 40+ clicks. On the 516 and 816, you have three settings to worry about. You can run the gun on normal without a suppressor, you can kick it up to adverse if the gun is badly fouled or if it's struggling to cycle in cold weather, and you can drop it down to suppressed to keep the gun from running too hard with a suppressor attached. Gas systems like that used to be almost entirely exclusive to piston guns, but they just aren't anymore. We've got stuff like the rifle speed gas block, the bootleg adjustable BCG, or the simple 3-position gas system on the Ruger SFAR. Also, the downside of having such a simple system like that is that it doesn't easily accommodate different suppressors or ammo types, so in order to keep things running, all of the settings have to be a bit overgassed. I think that's totally acceptable. Obviously, it's better than having the gun not work, but something like a rifle speed gas block is still quick to adjust, doesn't require any tools, and gives you more granularity of adjustment to suit whatever weird suppressor you bought. For military or law enforcement that are purchasing their rifles and suppressors at a much greater scale, it's pretty easy to find one combination that works and just buy that. But what if you're an idiot like me and you bought a YHM Resonator K thinking you would put it on your 5.56 rifles? Well, it turns out that an overboard K-can does not add enough back pressure to allow me to run something like the 516 on the suppressor setting. Definitely something to keep in mind if you're one of those guys who bought a single 30 cal suppressor to use on all of your guns and may also be considering buying a piston gun. The other theoretical advantage to suppressing a short-stroke piston gun is that it doesn't spray gas in your face. As the saying goes, DI guns shit where they eat. The gas needed to drive the action is dumped into the upper receiver, whereas on a piston gun, it gets dumped under the handguard. This is almost true. Piston guns are more pleasant to shoot suppressed, assuming you only shoot like 3 rounds in the span of an afternoon. We've talked before about how gas-busting charging handles can only do so much to mitigate gas buildup on a DI gun because most of the gas from suppressed shooting is coming out of the barrel and the ejection port. Unfortunately for suppressor owners, piston guns also have barrels and ejection ports. Piston guns, therefore, are only more pleasant to shoot suppressed than DI guns for a couple of rounds. They don't spray high-pressure gas into your eyeballs, but after a handful of rounds, you still get a cloud of noxious gas in your face because it builds up around the ejection port, and your face is only a few inches away. By the same token, piston guns don't run much cleaner suppressed than DI guns. Maybe the lubrication won't burn off quite as fast, but again, the gas and the junk is coming out of the barrel. I know the 416 has a reputation for chugging along at high round counts, but it turns out that you can make any AR run longer by hogging out the gas port. That's why Daniel Defense uppers have a reputation for being overgassed, and it's why Geisley ships their guns with an H2 heavy buffer and a stronger return spring. They're more concerned with reliability than with obsessively tuning the recoil out. The AR market has completely flipped on its head since the AWB sunset 20 years ago. I'm sure that there was a time when the average short-stroke piston gun was more reliable and a better suppressor host than the average DI gun. That time was not recently. So what about the downsides of piston ARs? The beefed up gas block and piston drive rod do add a bit of weight to a piston gun, and that weight is biased to the front of the gun. It's not really a significant difference, haha, by itself. A lot of the extra weight on the SIG 516 or even a 416 is from the big beefy handguards, and you can put a big beefy handguard on any gun. So on the one hand, that weight isn't a big deal, but on the other hand, weight added for no purpose is purposeless weight, and opting into purposeless weight makes you a big stupid idiot, so that's something to keep in mind. There was also some talk about how piston guns tend to be louder than DI guns when suppressed due to piston pop and port pop. In theory, the action of the short stroke gun is faster than a DI gun, and if the gun unlocks too early, you get more noise and gas from the ejection port. You also, in theory, get a bit of a bang from the piston opening up under the handguard and dumping all the gas to atmosphere. And the last big knock against short-stroke piston guns is that they kinda shoot like poop from a butt. The piston only moves a very short distance and has to impart all of its force to the bolt carrier in a very short window of time to achieve a complete recoil cycle. Basically, it has to slap the shit out of the carrier. Also, the force of the impact is not directly in line with the bore. This is why short-stroke piston guns tend to have a sharper, snappier recoil impulse. Again, this is one of those things that's not really a big deal, but if I fail to bring it up, I would basically be lying to you by omission. So there you have it, the SIG 516. Was it a better gun than the HK 416? Sure, 15 years ago, but that was 15 years ago. You can't get them anymore, so it's kind of a moot point. Of course, HK won't sell you the good versions of the 416 either, so that's kind of a moot point. This leaves the Caracal 816 as the de facto winner of our little short-stroke piston pileup. If you feel the need to buy any of these guns, I totally get it because they are very cool. Just make sure you're not doing it because you think you're getting a better suppressor host, because that's kind of not true. Alright, that's our show. Thank you for watching, guys. If you'd like to support this channel, check out the links in the video description to our sponsors and also to Subscribestar, where you can get access to early videos, bonus videos, and Discord. You can also become a YouTube member to get some of those benefits as well as custom emotes, which are very fun to use. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions, and I will see you next time.
Hello, Smudgy.